first question is, we're doing the news live from Cannes.
Yep.
And we think that in a lot of ways, because we run the brand safety series and events, we've been starting to think that brand safety is synonymous with current events.
Yep.
Something happens in the world, whether it's a fraudulent attack, whether it's viewability, whether it's essentially becomes the media news. And
Yeah.
do you think the way that we're thinking about brand safety as current events or synonymous with current events makes sense? Is that logical to you?
Absolutely. So what I think is really interesting and fascinating is the fact that we have these global platforms, and because news and current events gets disseminated so quickly, something happens in a sports game or something happens unfortunate that's like a brand safety issue, something as horrific as a tragedy that happened in Texas or anything around the world, it travels very quickly on these social platforms. So the fact of the matter is brand safety and suitability is always a current event, and what was safe today might be problematic tomorrow. So it's something that you always have to stay on top of. So the fact that you guys are doing news from Cannes makes complete sense from a brand safety perspective.
I'm glad to hear that, because it's funny, as we program our events, a lot of times it comes down to the last minute, and we're like, why is it coming to the last minute? Because the news is the last minute, right?
That's right.
You can't plan an event. So anyway, the fun question.
Yes.
You've been here a couple days or a week or however long you've been in the south of France. What's the coolest, most interesting thing you've seen so far?
Well, I think it's fascinating. This is like the Cannes of the platforms. So Amazon is here for the first time. Now, admittedly, the last time we were at Cannes in person was 2019, and they had their ad business was much smaller. But TikTok, think about TikTok in 2019, and TikTok's here in a major way. Google's here. They're always here in a big way. But Meta's doing interesting things around the metaverse. And what I think is fascinating is, so the platforms have gone big, the agencies and brands are certainly here, but we don't see a lot of publishers here. I just commented the other day, somebody was talking to me and said, hey, where's BuzzFeed? Where's the Daily Mail? And I just think that's indicative of the switch that's happened over the last few years, certainly during the pandemic, where the platforms gain more and more priority, and it's where the traffic is. And so I think it's just interesting and fun to see it all play out here live in Cannes.
I think that's an interesting other question that I'm going to add to my list of questions. Is
Okay.
Why are the publishers not here in Cannes? Because I think that's right. I mean, there's some of them are here. I love the New York Times. It's business in the front, Wordle in the back.
Yeah, that's very
That's
cool.
a very good line.
Yeah.
That's a very good line. But anyway, so Zephyr.
Yep.
You're here for a week at least. What do you, like? If you had to say top 2-3 goals you want to accomplish before you leave, what are they?
So we're meeting with all the platforms, and we're having really interesting discussions and around brand safety and suitability with the platforms. We've just done a deal with. We're a measurement provider on TikTok, so we're continuing our collaboration and partnership there. It was announced a few months ago that we're partnering with Meta on the feed environment to create brand safety suitability tools for that feed environment. So we're having meetings with them here as well. The other major platforms we're in discussions with as well. So there's a lot of those kind of discussions. The other thing is just to get together with all the constituents that are part of GARM. We had a terrific breakfast this morning that was moderated by Axios, but Rob Rakowitz, who leads the GARM initiative, was a part of it, and all the brands and a lot of the people on the steering committee were a part of it. So that's another thing. And then I guess the last thing is just to catch up with people that we've been looking at in Zoom internally as well. There's a lot of internal employees that hadn't met each other in person, and so it's nice just to be in person finally.
Right, you were on a session with GARM this afternoon too. Right?
Yeah. This afternoon we did a 3-year look back on what's happened over the last 3 years, and it's just fascinating to see how much evolution has happened in the brand safety and suitability space in the last 3 years.
Just a shameless plug. You're a great partner of ours.
Yes.
GARM's a great partner of ours.
Yes.
We're all going to be at Brand Safety Week in November together.
Yay.
Very cool stuff. So now kind of circling back to the news,
Yep.
right? Our goal is to get commentary from executives like yourself on stuff that's going on in the headlines.
Yeah.
And not just necessarily media related.
Yep.
But here's the question for you. Will Twitter be bought by Elon? And by the way, since we started doing this today, some news has broken. But nonetheless, will he ultimately buy the company? But more importantly, what does that mean for content moderation within the big platforms?
It's a great question. I personally believe that Elon will buy Twitter. I mostly pin that to the fact that he's such a super user of the platform. He's clearly a fan of the platform. And by the way, if you've been following the ideas that he's throwing out for the platform, there's some that are a little off kilter in an Elon way, but he's got a lot of great ideas for that platform. And I just think it'd energize that platform in a very serious way. And I kind of buy his sincerity with the whole issue. I don't know if he's going to buy it at the price that he originally threw out there, but I do think a deal will get done. And to your point, he's clearly signaled, like in the brand safety world, obviously, platforms can choose to open up the aperture a little bit more in terms of freedom of speech. And when a platform takes that stance, it just means that there's a much more of a need for content moderation through third parties, and obviously that's where Zephyr comes in, because a platform has to be a kind of a public square, a place where people can have discussions and debates and whatnot. But it doesn't necessarily mean that a brand needs to be around those discussions or those debates. And so, the future of content moderation and the future of brand safety and suitability for big platforms, I think it'll only become much more relevant in years to come. Not only because of Elon buying Twitter, that's just one platform, but I think the world is going to look much more different in years to come than it has in the past. And so because it's evolving in this way, brand safety and suitability and content moderation is going to have to evolve with it. Marketers are going to have to stay up on that evolution and really be protective of where their brand appears on these platforms.
Right. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, there is precedence here, right? I mean, it's not like the Salzburg family that owns the Times is not outspoken.
That's right.
It's not like Jeff Bezos doesn't own the Washington Post.
That's right.
It's not like, so these publications have been owned by, but maybe it's the first digital first platform being owned by.
By the way, Lauren Jobs owns The Atlantic, right? Doesn't she? I mean, there are precedents for families who have a point of view. Obviously, there's always kind of a separation sort of between editorial and the ownership. I think it's even more relevant in the fact, like, Twitter's it's a public square, it's an open forum.
Right.
So it just depends on how the stance of that, and the libertarians would say, like, open that aperture up, let a lot of debate happen, which I think ultimately that's up to the platform to decide that. But ultimately, it makes content moderation even more important, brand safety, suitability, third-party tools in these platforms more relevant.
And ultimately, right, he'll just test his limits.
Yeah.
He'll just test his limits, we'll see, and then we'll see how it all works out. Well, Rich, this was great. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And thanks, everybody.